as artists, we're all striving to dig deeper and deeper and deeper into ourselves to discover what our true identity is. As musicians, it's the same thing. In this video, I want to talk about ways to start bringing those bubbles to the surface and how to begin unlocking your true musical identity. Tell me if you can relate to this. Have you ever felt like your music, it sounds like somebody else's? Or you wrote a song and then you were like, oh, that sounds like so-and-so. I didn't mean to. I wanted to sound like myself. Well, finding your own sound is the key to starting off not doing that. I was struggling with this at one point, and I realized that it was to the point where I was just coming up with chord progressions that were very similar to songs that I was listening to at the time. So I decided to do something a little, I don't know, call it radical, but I came up with the idea to actually fast music. Like, I wouldn't listen to music for 2 weeks. That was actually my goal. It was really, really, really difficult. You can imagine, to just abstain from listening to all music. In the car, at home, I intentionally did not turn my music on. And then the goal was, at the end of 2 weeks, I was just going to dedicate a lot of time in front of my instrument, the piano, the guitar, the bass, whatever. And I was just going to write and see what came out of me. I found that helped. And I found that in that isolated state, I found that it was easier to really get in touch with what sounds were in there, in me. And I felt like it was a lot easier to pluck them out of the ground. There weren't as many weeds, so to speak. But what I discovered during that time was that there are things that I gravitate towards. There are things that I love and there are things that I hate. For example, I discovered during that time, I really hate the sound of a G major chord. And I mean, that's kind of lame because, a major chord is a major chord is a major chord. But something about the tone, that frequency of a G, a B, and a D, I don't care for. I don't like it. So I stopped using it. If we're talking about chords I like, and I knew this beforehand, but my favorite is A flat minor. That was just such a time of refreshing and renewal to just kind of spend time just being I like that. Yeah, that's a good sound. I have a weird effect on right now. It didn't really illustrate the chords so well. But you know what? I'm not saying it's not important to identify what your influences are. That's a big part of it as well. But then bring it to a point where you can discern what about those influences you like. And that, in my opinion, is the beginning of developing your distinct style. So why does defining your sound matter? Well, it brings a connection to your audience that is more authentic than if you were just out of touch with what sounds are authentically you, because you're going to attract listeners to you that are on your same page and will follow what you're putting out there because you're speaking their language, because you've learned to speak your own language, so to speak. It'll build confidence because then you're kind of set aside from the masses of everybody else that just creates music that's similar to each other. And you really set yourself aside as someone to be like, oh, that's so their style. You want it to be your style. Think of Prince, okay? You think of Prince, you're like, oh man, Prince had style. He knew who he was. He knew what he wanted to sound like. Sure, he had influences, but he wasn't afraid to really dive into all of the nuances of what made him unique. And Prince definitely stood out in the crowd. Okay, so think about your fingerprints, right? Think about how nobody on earth has ever had fingerprints like yours. That's just skin deep. But if you break it down, make it more complex and deeper. And if you think about your experiences, where you grew up, your childhood, Who raised you? Who were your friends? What kind of climate did you grow up in? Was it always sunny? Was it raining all the time? Did you ever get hurt? Have you not gotten hurt? All of these things are so unique and beautiful to the entire makeup that you are created to be. And I think that almost on a DNA level, you have a sound that you were created. It's like buried and embedded within you, like on a cellular level. And that should come out. I believe that you were created to create, especially if you're a musician and you're drawn to the need to be creative. I know I said before that it was a great technique that I had where I just purged all of my outside influences for 2 weeks. But, bringing it back to the fact that your influences are important to you, you want to ask yourself, who are your influences? Make a list of your top 5 favorite artists or bands. Break down why you love them. Are you drawn to them because their melodies just really speak to you? Is it their rhythm? Is it like really, really tight or really complex? Is their tone just so like the timbre of it and the tone of it is just so cultivated and worked on and a lot of care went into it? Or is it the lyrics? Do their lyrics just really speak to you? Because these are all things that if you are naturally drawn to them, then that should come out in your music too. I was just listening to my husband and my stepson talk, and they were talking about how if the melody is like catchy, that's what really hooks them when they're listening to a song. And I didn't say anything at the time, but I was like, nope, for me, I can deal with a bad melody. I can deal with it. I'm not happy with it, but I can deal with it. But if the lyrics are just like, so bad, I can't. I cannot. If there's like a lot of rhyming, and now I'm just kind of like sharing like all of my quirks and like preferences. There is like a cheap way of rhyming that just like irks me. And for me, I will fall in love with a song because of the lyrics, before the rhythm, before the harmonies, before the melodies. The lyrics are the first thing I fall in love with, and I know that about myself. So when I'm writing a song, you better believe that the lyrics are going to be my main focal point. Knowing that about myself gives me the understanding of how my mode of operation works. So here's a little tip when you're doing that. Look for patterns. Identify what genres do you gravitate towards. There are so many questions you need to ask yourself. Do you like a full band or do you want it just instrumental? All these things matter and they make up who you are as a musician. So the next step is to explore your preferences. What sounds, tones, or styles resonate with you? When it comes to like synthesizers, I like a synthesizer that sound like morphs and evolves over time. Like watch this, I'm just gonna hit one note. Love that. I love that so much. I have in my toolbox about 1 million little tabs, like in my head, my toolbox in my head, when I'm talking about like my preferences, that I know what my preferences are. And I pull it out. I'm like, oh yeah, this one makes that noise. That's a noise I love. In synthesizers, I know what kind of waveforms I prefer. It's a sawtooth wave. Those are my favorites. A little gritty. I prefer a little bit of grit in that. If I'm playing a bass, I want humbuckers for my pickups. I prefer a 5-string. I like elixir strings because I prefer the lack of that squeaky sound. But all these things matter. Say, for example, just an example, if your instrument is the keyboard, record yourself experimenting with sound, because the worst thing is when you come upon something that you absolutely love and it just like hits you the right way, that then you move on and you're like, wait, what was that preset? What did I have it set to? Keep track of your preferences because they're going to come in handy as you begin diving deeper into the makeup of who you are as an artist. The next tip, combine and experiment. Mash up things. Take elements from your influences and preferences and combine them in unexpected ways. One of my favorite words comes to mind in this scenario is juxtaposition. It's contrast. It's like, oh, something that's gritty paired with something that's pretty. Combine things and see how you feel about them. Play a quick demo that combines two contrasting influences. Experimentation can be messy, but it's necessary. And mistakes are all part of the process. That's okay. But just think of it like you're painting. Just get your hands dirty. It's okay. And remember that you're a musician, so you're not actually getting your hands dirty. This tip is a bonus, and I think that this is probably one of the most important, actually. So this one is all about staying consistent, because consistency is going to take care of so much of your education on discovering who you are. While you're exploring, stick to regular practices and just create. Keep creating. I don't care if it's good. I don't care if it's bad. I don't care if you do it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. Just do whatever you can do to be consistent. If, say, you have 5 minutes to sit at the piano every day, do it. You need to create a habit of just sitting at your instrument and just experimenting and applying everything that we just talked about. Your sound is not going to emerge overnight, but through repetition and refinement, it will over time take shape. So really commit to sticking it out, to seeing it take shape. And yeah, I know time can be like we want it now, but you're not going to have it right now. You don't know what you're going to sound like in 5 years unless you sit down with your instrument daily, or at least I'd say like a minimum of 5 days a week. Just sit down with it. No matter how short a time it is, just spend time with it. So to recap, identify your influences, explore your preferences, and combine to experiment. And with that bonus tip, be consistent and do all of these things every day. Your musical identity is not about being perfect. It's about being authentically you. So I just want to take a moment to encourage you to start your sound exploration today. Share your progress with us. Share it in the comments below. Share your thoughts. Share your concerns and your fears. And if you want extra help, I have an online community of musicians where this is what we work on. This is how we support each other. This is how we uplift each other and encourage each other and push each other. I believe in you. I believe in your music. I believe in the music that is just waiting under the surface. And I would love to see it come to the surface and see the light of day and find your listeners and find your followers and take a catalyst to make an impact. Don't give up on finding your sound. Do not. If you want to be part of SoundPaint community for musicians, then check out my bio, because the link is in there for you to join us. We have fun. And we encourage each other, we build each other up, and we push each other. That's the important part. All right? So don't give up on your sound. Don't give up on striving to find and refine your sound. All right? Have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye.